All right. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another space to Hyperspace. This is where we unpack the latest stories and happenings in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. I'm Chris from Spacebar, one of the main contributors to HyperKorea Validator.
And I'm Jerry from HyperKorea.
Yeah, so each week we break down the major updates across Hyperliquid world, what's moving the markets, why it all matters. Today we've brought you an interesting topic that's been going around the ecosystem. And before that, welcome back, Jerry. We missed you last week.
Thanks, Chris. I was away for the week. Went on a little vacation.
Nice. Hope you enjoyed the break. All right, so let's dive right in. So the big topic right now in the ecosystem is something called BLP that could be built directly in Hypercore. I'm kind of guessing it stands for Borrow Lending Protocol. But anyways, whatever that means, it is not official since there was no official announcement. There's nothing on X, but there are signs you can already see on the testnet. You can borrow, supply, and withdraw using USDC and Per. And on the mainnet, only the contracts are deployed and the endpoint is live. The only thing missing right now is the UI and the actual markets. So what does this really mean? I mean, we think that it means they're trying to integrate a borrow lending infra straight into Hypercore. So they're moving toward a model where financial primitives are native and not just floating around as smart contracts on HyperEVM. So when you hear this, the obvious question is why? Like, why are they doing this? Um, because there are already built in-house BLP when you already have like eight forks on HyperEVM. And I think the answers are just for superior fundamentals, which is safe execution. So a borrow lending system built inside the hypercore will give builders more stability, better execution, and less risk. So don't get me wrong, external oracles like Pyth or Redstone are very solid. Like maybe you can actually really trust them, but they could still come with latency and manipulation exposure since they're external. And if this BLP ends up handling liquidations using the Hypercore's own order book and mark price, I think that alone kind of removes a massive chunk of systemic risk. So when the exchange engine and the borrow and lending engine speak the same language, I think you get that consistency and instant execution. But if this thing goes live, I guess there are many impacts that will come along with it. One of them is it could be a friction, but then the hypercore based DLP will kind of compete directly with existing hyper EVM lending protocols. So that means like Hyperland, HyperFi, or even Morpho curators like Felix and Hyperbeat are now in the race. But after this happens, I think the users will choose based on stability and interest rates and point incentives. And then naturally, there will be like a split happening. So the big assets like BTC, ETH, and Hype will migrate to Hypercore because it's safer and it's more efficient, while the smaller caps and the more complex assets will kind of stay on EVM. Um, Also, I think it seems like projects kind of struggle to build a proper core integrated lending system using only read precompiles and core writer. I don't know if it's not available or it was just hard to do it. But I think some probably tried but couldn't fully connect the core's data, while the others simply just chose not to do it at all. Either way, though, I think nobody managed to build a version that the Hyperliquid team probably envisioned. So it kind of makes sense that the team stepped in and wanted to build this directly on Hypercore. If this happens, there will be some short-term noises, but regardless of that, I think this is a long-term improvement. Yes, there will be competition between dApps and Hypercore BLP. Yes, some EVM projects might fall short, but I think the real point here is on risk reduction. So the liquidations anchored directly to Hypercore's order book and mark price remove a huge portion of the danger that comes with smart contracts based lending. And honestly, as users, I think we trust Hyperliquid's risk engine far more than we trust other DeFi teams. And also, I think there's also a different angle here that you can see it. I think when you don't know if a project is safe or not, I think looking at their branding or docs doesn't really help you. That doesn't really help to see if this is safe or not. But then on the other hand, I think looking at the tech architecture actually does. So if the core financial logic is inside the chain state, in this case, using hypercores built-in Oracle mechanism, I think that signals a big reliability. And for users with like a lot of capital, I think safety is very important. And just like how dApps today, like things that use builder codes to make their own trading UIs, like Base or something like that, nothing kind of stops them from building custom UIs on top of the core native lending engine. I think I talked about this in the second episode or something. Even I did, but one might think like, then why use a dApp in HyperEVM when it's already in the hypercore itself? Like I mentioned before, people with enough capital will naturally gravitate towards the safest option. And also, if it gives a lot of incentives with low risk and high reward. So if that option is inside hypercore, that's where the liquidity will go. And to add, I think another upside is the utility this brings to the HIP1 assets, like the big ones like BTC, Hype. So if Hype becomes part of a collateral system, I think that kind of directly boosts demand for staking and gives a Hype a share of the protocol profit. And I think that's what the community needs right now.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And for sure, I'm bullish on BLP, and there are a lot of benefits, like you mentioned. But one thing we have to consider is that as Hypercore's functionality expands, the potential risks within Hypercore could also grow. And for example, there were cases where HLP got attacked, like with Jelly and Popcat. Also, since XPL pre-launch liquidity was low, with attacks and short squeezing. In BLP's case, in one important and scary risk could be a liquidation cascade. This can occur during a serious bear market. Yeah, for example, let's imagine that someone borrows USDC using Hype as collateral. When the market crashes, the collateral value decreases. Eventually, the borrowed USDC value exceeds the collateral value. It triggers liquidation. Then the protocol or liquidator sells the collateral. This crashes the market even further. Finally, it turns into a bad flywheel. Also, if BLP uses Hyperliquid spot mark price as the liquidation oracle, it relies solely on the order book. So if liquidity is scarce, price volatility could be much higher than on other exchanges. That's why most people assume that BLP's collateral will consist only of blue chip assets with deep order book liquidity like BTC, Hype, and ETH. To prevent this problem, BLP can use both perp and spot mark price or other oracles. Since the perp mark price incorporates other exchanges oracles and the order book's mark price EMA,
Mhm.
I think it would be safer. But well, anyways, I believe Hyperliquid Labs will design it well.
Yeah, I also believe that they will. And it's true though, those risks do definitely exist. And especially like right now, I think we're going into a bear market. So if they put it up right now, the risk that you just mentioned could occur. And also I think I also agree on the using perp and spot mark price both at the same time since although perp could create some lag since only spot is kind of the exact value of the tokens, I think using both of them would kind of even them out. But yeah, so personally, I just thought like to kind of alleviate that fear as a user standpoint, I think putting a maybe liquidation option could work well here. So like instead of rushing collateral into the order book and you run it through an auction, so you run it through an auction. So everything feels a lot more controlled by users themselves. They can choose when to they can either choose when to get liquidated or just go out, or they can just let it be and kind of wait for an auction to happen. So by doing this, they can kind of clearly see where their health stands, where the liquidation will happen, how strong it is. Then they'll understand when they're getting close to the liquidation, and the protocol also can use like partial liquidation instead of just wiping someone out all at once. So overall, I think this could really kind of reduce the user shock and avoid extreme cascades and risk that you just explained. Yeah, but that's just my take on it, and I think this liquidation auction could be something fun as well as safe for the users. And yeah, I think this was one of the topics that was very interesting. So we brought that up, and I hope you guys learned a lot from today. And that's the wrap up for this week's Hyperliquid recap.
Yeah, we'll be back for more next week.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. This is HypurrSpace signing off until next week. Thank you guys.
Thank you.